Hi, it's David Avrin with the Customer Experience Advantage podcast. So what does prosperity mean to you? Coming out of a pandemic where scarcity ruled the conversations, right? Scarcity of products, scarcity of employees, and more. How do we make that shift as business owners, as consumers, as entrepreneurs? How do we shift to a growth mindset and tap into the pent-up demand for goods and services and connections and more? Well, my guest today is Randy Gage. He spent decades as a powerful voice for prosperity, as a primary driver for a healthy, positive, and abundant life. He says that you can have gratitude for all that you do and all that you have, and yet still have more passion and desire and capacity to do, have, and become more. I'm talking today to the incomparable Randy Gage. It's David Avrin on the Customer Experience Advantage podcast. Back in 20 seconds.
You're listening to the Customer Experience Advantage podcast with David Avrin, featuring candid conversations with some of the most influential leaders in business today. Sit back and listen in, or feel free to watch the video version online. This is the Customer Experience Advantage podcast, and here's David Avrin.
Hi, it's David Avrin. Welcome to the podcast. It's kind of an interesting time. There's sort of a dichotomy right now in conversation. There's some who are still waiting for the next shoe to drop, waiting for the next pandemic variant, and others who have the gas pedal to the floor, who are recognizing there's phenomenal opportunities. Some of those created during the pandemic when some businesses fell by the wayside. We saw others, consolidation and strategic acquisitions and others as well. But we really have this interesting duality right now. And my guest today, Randy Gage, has been a push forward, positive voice for so long. And I've been a fan and a new friend for some time. I mean, it's just watching him inspire audiences around the world. Let me give you a quick bio, and then we'll check in with him specifically. And we'll talk about the business climate today. We'll talk about the business environment. Randy Gage is a thought-provoking, critical thinker who will make you approach your business and your life in a whole new way. Randy is the author of 14 books translated into 25 languages, including Mad Genius, a manifesto for entrepreneurs, Risky is the New Safe, and his recent worldwide bestseller, Radical Rebirth. He's spoken to more than 2 million people across more than 50 countries and is a member of both the Speaker Hall of Fame and the Direct Selling Hall of Fame. And when he's not prowling the podium or locked in his lonely writer's garret, you'll probably find him playing third base for a softball team somewhere, which means the dude has an arm. He's got a gun because that's what you need at third base. My daughter was third base, varsity, all state in Colorado. Got to the point where I was afraid to even play catch with her because I'm like dodging my head because she was so freaking strong. Randy, thanks for taking the time and being on the show.
And thanks for knowing that third basemen have cannons.
You got to have a gun.
And actually, I'm on a team right now where I'm wasting that arm because I'm playing first base just because of some of the internal politics on the team. But, anytime you can get out, get in the sunshine, sweat it out, breathe some fresh air.
Just catch the ball. First base just catch the ball that third base throws to you. That's it. It's your only job. Yeah. Listen, I had a chance to hear you recently. You spoke at one of the conferences where I was attending, and I love the energy around of saying, listen, there's phenomenal opportunities right now, but I think people's mindset is getting in the way. What are you seeing right now post-pandemic? And granted, these podcasts, you want them to be a bit evergreen, but as we're coming out of it, what are you seeing in terms of mindset, positive, negative? What's getting in people's way right now?
What's getting in people's way right now is the media, the new media model of clickbait, which clickbait, if we define it, means the need to create fear and outrage. And so the traditional media has it, the social media has it. And so even though every tragedy, catastrophe, crisis always has corresponding hidden benefits, people aren't recognizing them because they're getting fed such a steady diet of fear that they can't even think that way anymore. They're just petrified. They're frozen. They're procrastinating. They're, laying in bed with the covers pulled over their head, waiting for the world to end, unfortunately.
Who's doing it right? I mean, there are, as you said, I mean, there's winners in every downturn, and for whatever reason. But it's mindset, but it's more than that. People actually taking action and doing some pretty exciting things. There's been some remarkable innovations that have come out of this time.
Yeah, like we're recording the visual part of this podcast on Zoom, which is a platform in 2019 existed just like it did today, but 0.1% of the population knew what it was. Now 99.8425% know exactly what it is, right? Because Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Skype and all kind of video conferencing are the direct benefits of a pandemic that had the world locked up at home, right? That's an example of just a hidden benefit that they're always there if you look for them, but unfortunately, not enough people are looking for them.
Talk to me about your new book, Radical Rebirth. You've written a number of books, dozen plus books in languages around the world. What was it about Radical Rebirth? What was the message that you had that you felt the world needed to hear?
I felt the world needed to hear that you can recreate yourself, that you can change your narrative, you can change your story. And even if you have a life you don't like, or you don't love, or even if you don't like yourself, or in some cases, even hate yourself, you can kill off the parts of you that you don't like, and you can recreate yourself. And so that, I felt like that book is really that's my 14th book. And I feel like it's the culmination of all 13 that I wrote before that. It's the thing that ties it all together, because I've written books for marketers, I've written books for entrepreneurs, I've written prosperity books. And this was the whole package. Like, this is how to look at the major areas of your life, whether it's God and religion, money and success, career and work, sex and sexuality, all of those things, and say, what are my core foundational beliefs? Are those beliefs serving me, or are those beliefs holding me back? And if they're holding me back, how can I destroy them and replace them with more empowering beliefs? And that's this process of radical rebirth that I call in the title, that you really do make yourself over.
You've been known for a lot of years as this guru, as a really powerful messenger for prosperity. Talk to us about the difference between prosperity and money, or prosperity and wealth. How does one feed the other? Because clearly it's more than a mindset, it's the actions that come with it. But talk to me about sort of that dichotomy between prosperity and wealth. Where's the connection, and where do they diverge?
Yeah, they're so interrelated. That's why the basis of that last book was I picked 6 major areas, because I thought, and still think, that all those areas are part of what we would call a holistic prosperity. How to manifest a life of health, happiness, and abundance. And because any one of those areas can hold you back, like health, right? If you're not healthy, you're not prosperous. You could have more money than Elon and Bezos combined. If you're not healthy, you would trade all that money in an instant to get your wellness back, right?
Well, we saw that with Steve Jobs, right? You know, at the end of his life, and the health problems that he had, he couldn't buy his way out of it.
You can't buy your way out of it. So, but you don't want to go the other way and say, well, money doesn't matter. That's the mistake a lot of people have. It's just money, or they're just things. No, let's recognize that it's this part of a holistic whole animal: health, mental harmony, relationships, money, material things, spiritual grounding. All of those things make up prosperity. And when you're not firing on all the cylinders, you're not really manifesting the kind of prosperity that you're capable of.
Let's be a little more tangible. So understanding that in terms of that, you've got to have your priorities straight. Talk about today's entrepreneurs. Talk about some of the opportunities that we're seeing in the marketplace as consumers are back out, buying, consuming, contracting. They're gravitating to a new generation of businesses and entrepreneurs who are doing things differently. Their mindset is different. Some of the traditional businesses and vendors of the past that are falling by the wayside for no other reason than they just didn't recognize the changes that are happening. Talk to us about sort of this new generation of entrepreneurs that doing some really radical and creative things in the marketplace that's drawing the attention and the dollars of consumers.
Health tech, huge. FinTech, huge. People who are looking at the developments like cryptocurrency and NFTs, the different model. If you think, like people say, well, retailers are having a hard time, and what about mom and pop retailers? My answer is always, well, is there any other business category you can think of that's still using the exact same business model they had 150 years ago and think that it still should be working?
Right.
Because there isn't, right? It'd be like trying to run a travel agency the way you ran travel agencies in the 70s. It's not going to happen.
This nostalgia can't be a primary driver, right?
Yeah,
just
like
because we're nostalgic for something.
We're both professional speakers, speakers bureaus, right? This is going to go the same way as travel agents. It's a dinosaur business model that doesn't reflect the reality of social media, the internet, blogs, tribe building, the way, in my case, I'm directly connected to my tribe. I have a podcast, I have a blog, I have social media channels that announce my events and connect with them, right? So I get bureau business and I'm happy when I do, but if I was going to sit around and wait for them to make me prosperous, I'd be insane, because that's a business model that's going down, not going up.
Talk to us about investing in your business. I know that you were talking about, and I've read up on a lot of your writings as well. And there's a lot of people talking about debt and scarcity and the things that we should do to, not spend so much money on frivolous kinds of things as well. But there's a balance, isn't there? I mean, there's a balance for me. My wife and I talk about this a lot. I don't want to live a life of deprivation in the quest for wealth at some future date or after death. How do we find the balance? Because as consumers, clearly, my audience and others as well, they want people to continue to spend. But what's your mindset? What's your philosophy in terms of how we spend and why we spend, and how do we do that more effectively to build that wealth, but also live a good life?
Well, you threw out a lot of things there, because you started with investing and then went into purchasing and then went into how we do both in a prosperous way. So let's try to take it step by step. I'm totally against debt. One of the principles I teach is to become debt-free as quickly as you can. But it makes sense to use debt when you can create leverage. So if you can buy a 12-unit apartment building that has a value of $1 million and you can do it with only $100,000 down, and you're creating that kind of leverage, and the cash flow from that building is going to pay off the note, hey, that's a prosperous way to use debt. That's a prosperous way to, in my business, I'm always investing in online learning platforms. I'm investing in the back end, the IT part of my business, how I can deliver my tangibles electronically, digitally. I'm investing in marketing. So I believe in investing where you're going to get that return on your investment. That's a whole different category than borrowing money to buy a new car, borrowing money to get a furniture set, a suite, a dinette set, or a new HD TV. That's probably not a prudent way to do debt. So the next part of your question about, hey, when do we buy? How do you create that balance? I'm always looking for, is this going to really enhance my life? So I have no problem at all turning down a contract that might make me $30,000 or $40,000 because it falls on a weekend when my softball team has playoffs or a tournament, because that is one of the things that I light up about, the fact that I can still get out and play in the fresh air and the sunshine and challenge my body and challenge my mind. That's important to me. So I'm willing to give up income for that. But you need to say is, find the things that really matter to you. I'm a tall guy, so it matters to me that I fly first class and I'm not in a seat designed for somebody who's 5'9". I have to be productive on the road. I'm speaking to 10,000 people. I don't want to do that after flying economy to Australia in the middle seat, row 35 across from the lab. I'm not going to be able to. So, luxury travel is an important thing for me. If you're 5'6" and you travel one time a year, it's probably not
a little less important. Yeah, a little less important.
Maybe your thing is you love motorcycles and you want a Harley Davidson, or you're a skier and you want a separate, a second home in the mountains at a ski resort. Find the things that really matter to you and, spend the money on those, and then just don't go for the instant gratification stuff. Go for the stuff that really adds meaning to your life, the stuff that creates memories with the people that you love.
Tell me about your audience. Who loves Randy Gage? Who are the people that hang on your every word? And what are the things that not just you encourage them to do, but what are the businesses that you see some real runway for in the coming years? You have tens of thousands who probably far more that read your books and attend your presentations and follow your blogs and your podcasts. What do they do for a living, and what are they getting from you?
I think my biggest market is entrepreneurs, people who are self-employed, a lot of people in direct selling, a lot of salespeople, and a lot of high-tech people, Silicon Valley types. I do get corporate people, but I think the more forward-thinking ones who approach their job more with an entrepreneurial mindset.
Sure.
At the essence of my work, I always believe everything comes down to this ultimate question. Do you want to be a victim or do you want to be a victor? And just like you opened up the talk with, hey, here we are in the end of this pandemic. That's what's happened over the last 2 years. Some people have chosen to become victims. Other people have chosen to become victors. So the people who take responsibility for their life and don't want to be victims, that's really my tribe.
Talk to me about the shift. I mean, what did they go through? Listen, you and I have been around this game for a long time. There's no shortage of, and at all respect for the mountain climbers and the people that have overcome physical disabilities and transcended those things. Very, very inspiring stories. But there's sometimes lacks, I think in my mind, a direct connection to what people are doing on a daily basis. What are the tools that you're giving these entrepreneurs and others? What's the shift that occurs as a result of the time with you, with your books and others as well, that helps them get past the blocks that they have?
I'm the outside voice, like for the corporate clients I have, where I'm on the retainer contracts, I'm their outside strategic advisor. They call me and say, hey, I don't know if my VP of marketing is right, or I don't know if I hired the right person for CFO, or I have these problems with my board of directors, or like when the pandemic happened, I had people calling me, in like March 2020. And hey,
Right.
I get my product from this country. They're talking about closing the border. And I was like, okay, listen, we're going to hang up the phone in 3 minutes from now. I want you to Google warehouse space. I want you to find some. I want you to drive there. I want you to buy the biggest rent, the biggest, at least 35 to 40,000 square foot warehouse. I want you to place an immediate order. And I don't want to talk about what their particular product line
Sure.
is, because that would betray a confidence. And I was like, do that, then call me back in an hour. And that's what they did. And they got a warehouse. And then we put in an order for about $2 million worth of their product. And they got it across the border 2 days before the border was closed because of COVID. So they survived the business, the pandemic, and they're still in business, and now they can prosper. But had they not done that, they would have been out of business by June of 2020, because they would have had no inventory to sell, even though they had people in their market who want to buy their product line, and they had the ability to deliver it during the pandemic. So really, I'm just, they pay me to help them think differently and challenge the way they think. I'm really big on the two superpowers, I believe, are deep thinking and multidisciplinary thinking. And that's what I'm trying to challenge the people I work with to do.
Is it the opposite of those? I mean, are you offering a counter voice to those who are saying circle the wagons, those who are tapping on the brakes? Because clearly you come at it from a strategic perspective. I mean, it's not just saying, hey, I'm the guy who's going to say, be bold, go for it. That you've got that strategic mindset as well. But even for some of the smaller entrepreneurs and the people who follow you and respect you and listen to you, what's the shift that's going on for them?
Yeah, I'm definitely the guy who is saying, no, don't tap the brakes. No, put your foot down on the accelerator. I wrote a book in 2012, came out in 2013, called Risky is the New Safe. And I was about how to peer around the corner and see what's happening in the future. And as I did the radio interviews TV interviews to promote that book, I mean, the shows I was on, they just thought I was crazy, because I was talking about these wacko ideas like Bitcoin and ride sharing apps and exploration, vacationing on the moon, and the ability to, genetic engineering and breakup of the EU and things like that, that you look at them now and you say, well, of course, those are all obvious things, but they weren't
back then. No, they weren't.
Then people thought I was crazy. And any futurist will tell you the future is it's always here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. I forget the guy's name who originally made that quote, but pretty much any futurist is going to adopt that philosophy. It's here already, right? So you just have to say, okay, we know what the future is going to be. Take some critical thinking,
Sure.
Take some deep thinking, but it's there. The answers are there. And then you say, okay, so if that's the issue, what are the challenges that are going to come out of that issue? And if you can know what are the 3 things that keep your target market awake at night at 3 a.m., you'll never be out of work. You will never lack for clients. You will always have people crawling naked over broken glass to throw money at you, because you help them solve problems and add value.
Do you think we have a greater tolerance or appetite for some of those innovations because we've seen such a rapid influx of some of those? Somebody was saying that in many ways that COVID had accelerated what's long been predicted about how we're going to do business in a variety of capacities and the delivery and the real-time everything. Do you think people are less skeptical and more willing to embrace because they've seen how rapidly some of those things have come to fruition?
Yeah, I think there's some of that. The pandemic forced people to do that. You know, my mother is 80 something, maybe 85 now this year. And she shopped for groceries online for the first time in her life. She learned how to navigate websites for the first time in her life, right?
Yeah.
And that would not have happened if the pandemic didn't happen. So there is definitely some of that. The problem, I just wrote a blog on this the other day about how we just automatically assume anything new and high tech is better.
Right.
But that's not automatic. That's not always true. And that's why I believe one of the skill set, what keeps me working, what keeps me in demand is my ability for critical thinking. And that's why I say multidisciplinary thinking and deep thinking. These are the superpowers for creating prosperity in the new world, because anybody, you know, not anybody, but most people can learn how to work with intelligent machines. So now they can do stats and forecasting, and they can assemble gigabytes of data, and they can make certain assumptions on that. And that's what engineers do. That's what a lot of visionary leaders do. And then you have people who can do that without the machines, who can just say, you know, the thing I wrote in the blog was like, so we say, well, it's an advance because now our 8-year-old doesn't have to learn multiplication tables. We can teach them how to run a calculator on their smartphone, which
Right.
of course, every 8-year-old has a smartphone, right? And we say, well, that's obviously progress, but maybe it's not, because what happens in the brain development and the thinking process when a child has to learn multiplication tables? There's a benefit there that they're not getting with that smartphone.
I remember having a conversation with my son about him being frustrated. Why do I have to learn this? I'll never use this again. I said, well, that's part of the learning is how do you learn to do things you don't want to do, that you don't see value in?
The answer to him has to be because you're learning how to operate your brain. And that is something you are going to need to do again, right? Yeah. That's the part that nobody's talking about. And I'm saying those are the people that are going to really be in demand in 2025 and 2030 and 2040, is the people who can do that critical thinking without the intelligent machines, who can, you know, I schedule thinking time every week in my planner. And I have my favorite little area on the sofa, and I get my green tea, and I get a notepad and a pen, and I have no devices of any kind. And I think for 45 minutes. And people today think like this is some quaint relic of the days of Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics, and only sages and philosophers would want to do these kind of things. But I'm saying, no, that's what every entrepreneur in the world should be doing right now.
As we wrap up, as we look to the future, where the real opportunities for entrepreneurs and others are, I like what you said before, and I'd love you to say a little bit more about the whole idea of recognizing what some of the new advancements, some of the new amenities, the new changes, anticipating what's coming. Because you're right, we see the clues. I mean, for the futurists, it's not that they're wildly prognosticating the clues. I mean, there's elements of it are already here, and some of them we're adopting long available technologies just in a more broad way. But do you see it as some of the real opportunities, saying, look at all those advancements, those are new amenities, and those new conveniences. What challenges will those create for others, for competitors, for consumers in terms of implementation? Is that where some of the new services and the needs are going to come from? Is the ancillary challenges brought about by bigger changes?
Two approaches to this. One is, yes, that's what we need to do. We need to look around the corner and see what's coming next. But the other part of it, and the part that people forget, is we also have to look around the corner and say, what isn't going to change? What will still be the same 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? So like in the Risky book, one of the things I said was the World War III, the next World War III is going to be streaming video. And obviously, you know, we're in a very delicate time right now. Russia's invaded Ukraine. If depending on when you're listening to this, if you're 10 years from now, right now, we're talking about World War III in a much more serious vein, right? So I don't mean to diminish that or whatever, but I'm just saying what I wrote in the book is like, that's going to be the big business model coming up, because there will be trillions of dollars at stake. Because you know what's not going to change? What's not going to change is there's going to be millions of people who don't want to think for themselves. There's going to be millions of people looking for someone to tell them what to think. And millions of people who say, my life is just so fucking boring. Please give me some entertainment that I can sit in front of for the next 6 hours before I collapse and fall asleep, so I don't have to think about my life of quiet desperation until tomorrow at 6:30 when the alarm goes off, right?
Right.
And so Amazon is spending $500 million in Lord of the Rings, a TV show, right? That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, they just bought MGM. They just closed on that, like $8 billion or $13 billion. I don't remember what they paid for that. You have Marvel and, you know, Disney buying Marvel, Disney buying Star Wars for $4 billion purchases. And those were bargains, right? Disney probably made back their $4 billion on Star Wars in 2 years. And now they've probably made 80 billion since then, and they're going to make another 500 billion after that, right? Because they recognize, hey, that isn't going to change. People want escape, people, right? So you look at the things like that, and so there's a positive way to do this, and obviously there's a negative way to do that. But so you just look for, okay, what are the things that are going to change and create demand, and what are the things that are not going to change? And that's why I just think, you know, Jeff Bezos might be the savviest entrepreneur who has ever walked on planet Earth, when I just look at the moves that he's made up to this point. And, you know, if you read his shareholder letters, which are legendary, most, you know, like they teach college courses on just his annual letter to shareholders. And I don't know, it was probably 5-6 years ago. I remember he talking about, hey, you know, let's talk about what's not going to change. People are going to want stuff delivered fast. They're going to want free shipping. They're going to want economical prices. You know, the more we can develop this scale and bring down our unit cost and bring down our delivery cost, and if we electrify the fleet and we use drones for delivery and we invest in AWS, and it was just visionary, but visionary not just of the things that are going to change, but the things that remain the same. And that's part of the equation every entrepreneur has to think about, both sides of that coin.
Talking to Randy Gage. Randy, if people want to get in touch with you and learn more about you or follow you or your books or others as well, how do they get in touch with you?
All right. Don't look for me on social media. I closed down all my accounts and I'm no longer live there. randygage.com is kind of my Starfleet command site, and you can find my blog there and my podcast there and whatever live events or anything I'm doing there.
Cool. Thank you so much. Listen, I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, we've been in each other's orbit for a long time, and I appreciate the opportunity to sit down. Hang on for a second. We'll talk on the other side of this real quickly. You can pick up my copy of my new book, The Morning Huddle, Powerful Customer Experience Conversations to Wake You Up and Shake You Up and Win More Business, and all my other ones for those watching. The video version of this are strategically located next to my head here as well. All books on Amazon. Be sure to click to like this podcast, subscribe, leave your comments below, and click the little bell icon to receive notifications of new episodes. And you can learn more about my keynote speaking and consulting at davidavrin.com. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Customer Experience Advantage podcast. Check out past episodes, leave a comment. Big thanks to my guest, Randy Gage, and thanks to all my subscribers as well. I'm David Avrin. Be good.
This has been the Customer Experience Advantage podcast with David Avrin. Feel free to leave a comment and be sure to hit the thumbs up button. You can listen to past episodes and be notified of future ones by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. David's popular marketing and customer experience books are available in print, as well as Kindle and audiobook, and published in multiple languages around the world. You can stay connected and learn more at davidavrin.com. Thanks for tuning in.